Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Holy Cross All-Source RFP pre-bid webinar. Appreciate your participation today. I wanted to give you advance notice. This webinar will be recorded and it will be published to our website under the RFP materials after we're done. So next slide, please. Our outline for today's webinar is that we will go through and provide you an overview of our staff and the details of the request for proposals. And then after we've completed that activity, we'll open it up, unmute the phone lines, and provide you an opportunity for questions and answers. Next slide, please. So the Holy Cross team that's here today to answer any of your questions include myself, Steve Boyning, Lisa Reed, our power supply supervisor, Chris Bilby, our research and programs engineer, Sam Whalen, our supervisor of portfolio planning and rates, Mike Steiner, our key accounts specialist, and we have Brad Davis with us here too as well, who's an analyst in our power supply group. With that, I'd like to turn over to Sam Whalen, the remaining materials for the presentation about the RFP. Sam?
Thanks, Steve, and thanks everyone for joining. As Steve said, my name is Sam Whalen. I lead our resource planning efforts here, and I'm grateful for all the team members we have here that have worked on the RFP and will be assisting in the evaluation and answering questions. So I'd like to give a quick overview of Holy Cross Energy. We're a member-owned, not-for-profit electric cooperative in Western Colorado. We have about 120 to $130 million in annual revenue, 160 employees. Our winter peak is 270 megawatts. You can see our annual load profile there. We have about 150 megawatt summer peak and a minimum load of around 80 megawatts in the shoulder months. We serve 60,000 meters, about 45,000 individual customers within our service territory. We own 3,020 miles of distribution system. Over half of that is underground. And then we also own 120 miles of transmission. One thing to note is we are joint owners in the Piesco transmission system as well. And then I'd like to give a quick overview of just some of the current resources that we contract for or own. We're a part owner in Comanche 3, the coal-powered plant in Pueblo. We own 8% of that, about a 60 megawatt share. We have wholesale contracts with WAPA and Public Service Company of Colorado, an Xcel subsidiary, as well as wholesale contracts with Guzman Energy, and multiple local PPAs for small hydro, PV, a coal mine methane capture PPA, as well as a PPA for a woody biomass plant in gypsum. So as I said, our service territory is Western Colorado. Our distribution system starts in Vail and goes up, follows I-70 and then goes up Highway 82 up towards Aspen. And then it also goes west on I-70. And it's important to know we serve the south side of the interstate in I-70. Xcel Energy serves the north side there. And then also the town of Carbondale served by Xcel. And then City of Aspen and City of Glenwood have their own munis. So I want to give a quick update on our 70-70-30 plan. We released this plan and our board approved it back in 2018 with just the high level goals of achieving 70% renewable and clean energy by 2030 and 70% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And the third point that's important to note is our goal of accomplishing these with no additional increase in costs. So that's kind of an important parameter within this RFP. This goal has led us to enter into long-term contracts with Guzman Energy, and also we've executed contracts for a 100 megawatt wind farm in the Front Range and a 30 megawatt solar farm in the Front Range as well. So those contracts kind of shore us up on the bulk scale in terms of what we're looking for, and we estimate will be greater than 70% renewable, well ahead of our goals. subject to construction completion of those assets. So this RFP really, we're focusing this round on local distribution connected resources. Our original 70-70-30 plan aimed for around 25 megawatts of solar within the planning horizon through 2030. But we are open to additional resources, specifically if they're flexible and have associated storage with them, then we would be able to accept even a greater capacity. And then one important thing to note is with the accomplishment of these goals, we'll already have a degree of renewable oversupply. So that's one of the reasons you'll see throughout this presentation and the RFP is a focus on flexibility as well as storage attributes, just as we aim to manage that and try to not have additional oversupply. Next slide. So the focus will be for clean, flexible, non-carbon emitting utility scale, which our definition is interconnects with three-phase infrastructure. So really the minimum capacity that we're seeking is 200 kW AC. And we're also open to other resources. So, you know, back in 2017, some of you may have responded to our RFP for just solar. But in this round, we're really looking for anything that meets those criteria of being clean and flexible. And then also we're open to like load side distributed energy resources, whether that be with really a focus on that being resources sited behind the customer's meter. Next, I'd like to go through our solicitation needs. This is kind of a laundry list of some of the items that we'd like to see out of proposals. Not every proposal will include every item, but these are some of the criteria that we'd like to see and are hopeful to receive. First is connection to Holy Cross's distribution system. There's a few reasons for this. One is we'd like local resources, and we have members that would like to see resources that are local and they can point to. Also the resilience attributes that can come along with distribution connected resources. And then it's important to note that just contractually for us to receive capacity offset through our wholesale power provider, we need those resources to be connected to our distribution system. And then we mentioned clean non-carbon emitting projects and greenhouse gas offset projects. So an example of this would be like a coal mine methane generation or a flare project that generates greenhouse gas offsets. We're always open to community solar projects. We've been a pioneer in that area and have member interest in that as well. So if there are projects that are designated for community solar or at least can be flexible to fit a program design that allows for that, we would appreciate that. And then dispatchable controls and software and hardware to optimize that are important to us, especially as we look towards having storage in our service territory, as well as just the need to be flexible and to manage our distribution system. And then coincident peak mitigation capabilities. So this has to do with flexibility and moving beyond just a take or pay or as produced resource, but something that we can actually dispatch and offset our peak based on forecasted conditions. I mentioned the renewable oversupply mitigation capabilities, whether that's through storage or some ability to curtail. And then earlier I mentioned the system resilience capabilities, and that really has come to the forefront. In 2018, the Lake Christine fire went through basalt and knocked out 2 of the 3 transmission lines feeding Aspen. So this has just been something that we're considering, and kind of our whole territory and community members are considering as well. We live in mountainous terrain and resources that are sited in locations that have the ability to provide future resilience capabilities are preferential. And then resource adequacy attributes. This is important to us, not necessarily today, but something that we need for the future. And I'll just mention that, you know, in kind of our initial evaluations in what we've seen out in the industry, we think that there may be the potential for, like if we're looking at 2-hour storage, that could pencil out on a risk-adjusted basis better than 4-hour storage. But the resource adequacy requirements, especially looking into future market context in Colorado, those are important to make sure that there's flexibility in the future for resources to be either compatible today or developed in the future to meet those requirements. And then ancillary service capabilities and abilities for the resources to follow set points for real and reactive power are areas that we're considering as well. And then finally, we mentioned utility scale projects are needs out of the solicitation as well as behind the meter resources. And lastly, we're also soliciting land through this RFP. We have many landowners that will come to Holy Cross asking if their site can be developed for to help us in our renewable energy goals. And so you can go to the next slide now. So that kind of lands us with the 3 submittal options that we have outlined for this RFP. One is land only, and this will be if you have more than 10 acres of land and are a site owner, then you can submit a bid to like a lease option for your land. And then the second tier is project only. So this would be a developer that doesn't have land, but that would like to submit a project that they have. And then ultimately, Holy Cross can pair together shortlisted projects with ideal land locations at the lowest cost. And we'll kind of handle that matchmaking process. And then the last tier is if a developer submits project and land, and this is essentially the whole package option. I'd like to talk briefly about project preferences. Just our standard kind of disclaimer is that we may select any, all, or none of the projects that respondents submit. And we have this list of criteria that will be used in evaluating RFP responses. The first is cost, and then also projects that have, and I'll go into some pricing expectations a little bit near the end of the call, but that's a key concern and a key area of evaluation, especially as we're trying to hit our 70-70-30 goal of not raising our costs. And then developers that bring projects with long-term O&M plans where Holy Cross doesn't have to manage that process are preferred. Locations that are low cost, that we've outlined the high penetration distribution feeders in our RFP. So locations that stay away from areas that could be higher cost upgrades are preferred. And then we're looking for 10 to 15 year PPAs. But I will note that we're open and flexible to have an option to purchase the asset after the tax credits have been monetized, if it's a project that utilizes the ITCs. We'll give preference to proposals that are likely to achieve commercial operations earlier than others. And then obviously technology, especially as we look towards storage and other resources that may be less developed. We'd like technology that has been proven and that is sound. And then all things held equal, this labor piece, if local labor force is selected, that's preferential. That's important to us in our area. And then this last piece of seller performance risk is important to Holy Cross, that the seller of the project takes on the performance risk of the resource, especially resources that are flexible and dispatchable, that we're putting an economic reliance on making sure that it's available. So we'd like the seller to take on some of that risk. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Some of you may have received the RFP through email if you signed up for our early distribution list, but you can access the RFP and any updates at holycross.com. And you go to Working With Us, then Request for Proposals, and that will land you on our all-source RFP webpage. And there you'll find documents, the PDF file of the RFP. There's a technical proposal form template. There's an indicative form of PPA for smaller resources less than a megawatt, and there's an indicative form of PPA for megawatt or larger sites. And I'll just note here, on the technical proposal form and the indicative form of PPAs, these are really outlined towards PV as well as PV plus storage. So just note that we have flexibility in modifying those if the resource is not PV and PV plus storage, and we'll work with shortlisted offers on contractual negotiations that fit with the specific resource. And then last thing, questions can be emailed to the resource rfp@holycross.com email address. And right now we have an internal group that evaluates those questions, puts together the answers on a document, and we're targeting posting that document every week by close of business on Thursday. So check back often for updates to questions and answers. And then a quick overview of the timeline that's also in the RFP. March 2nd is our submission date for proposals. We'll review that through April and May, and then on June 1st, notify respondents if they've been shortlisted or not, and then go into detailed evaluation of those offers and then the matchmaking process if there's any Tier 2 submissions, and then with a goal of awarding final projects at the end of 2020. There's a couple items that we just want to hit on that are in the RFP or that we've had questions on that we just want to discuss with everyone on the call. One is interconnection costs. This is an area that Holy Cross will fund the interconnection cost upgrades after the point of delivery. And this is something that we will evaluate and it will be included in the bid evaluation. But it is something that we're willing to fund. We've had some questions on project sizing, and while we have a 200 kW minimum, in general, we're seeing projects in the range of 5 to 10 megawatts fit well within our system and at our various substations. So that's I think hopefully that helps a little bit on some sizing expectations. And then pricing expectations, I mentioned I'd go into that in a little more detail. Our PSA with PSCO is public information, so we can share some guidelines on that. In general, our energy cost, kind of our marginal avoided energy cost, is around 3 to 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And then just to give you an idea on competition, especially on the bulk scale, we've seen solar come in at sub 3 cents. And wind come in under 2 cents a kilowatt hour. So those are just some important metrics to be aware of in evaluation. And then I'll say on the PSA side, with the 3 to 3.5 cents, we also have some additional value we can assign to projects based on their production profiles as well as their dispatch capabilities. And that's based on our coincident peak offset. And we will evaluate and provide proper risk-adjusted credit for resources within our distribution system. I mentioned the ongoing Q&A documents will be posted on Thursdays. And then the indicative PPAs, we discussed a little bit. One thing I'll note on, I mentioned we'll modify them for other resources, but also in the indicative PPA on the larger than 1 megawatt size PPA, we have outlined just kind of a framework for having members invest in projects. And this is something that Holy Cross is open to. And essentially, just a high level, we're open to our retail customers entering into a relationship with the developer, whether they bring a financial investment or a investment of land, where they're looking to earn a return on that. We're open to our retail members investing in a project, and then Holy Cross giving a preferential allocation of RECs to offset, to provide those retail loads with 100% renewable energy claim. So that's a framework that we're hopeful to see submissions for that as well, and they will be evaluated in the same manner as the other PPAs or the other bids.